The Virelian Empire had stretched its cold metal grip across thousands of star systems, silencing rebellion with precision and efficiency. For over 1,000 years, no species had resisted their rule for long. Those who dared were erased, quietly, without public war. The reason was simple: the Shadow Talons. No one knew exactly what they looked like. Some said they were born in black holes, raised in silence, trained to kill without ever being seen. Others whispered that they weren't even alive in the traditional sense, just shadows given purpose. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: once the Shadow Talons were sent, the target disappeared. No warning, no second chance. Entire governments had fallen because of a single whisper to hire them. No one refused their mission, and they had never failed. That was, until the Empire discovered a strange little blue planet at the edge of a quiet spiral arm called Earth. At first, the humans appeared unremarkable. Their technology was outdated, their military was scattered, and their communication was primitive. But their attitude was something else entirely. The Empire sent a message offering Earth a chance to surrender peacefully. The reply came in the form of laughter and a video of a human official tearing up the Empire's message on live broadcast. It was amusing at first, until Earth's actions began to cause disruption. Human ships started appearing where they shouldn't. Small exploration vessels were found in zones that were off-limits even to high-ranking Empire citizens. They scanned things no one dared to touch. They entered unstable zones with curiosity, not fear. And somehow, they survived. Even more shocking, they came back with better technology each time. The Empire grew concerned. Not because humans were a threat yet, but because they weren't afraid of becoming one. The decision was made in silence. A contract was sent to the Shadow Talons. The target was not a single person, but a species. Eliminate key leaders, sow confusion, and let the humans destroy themselves from within. Simple, clean, silent. The mission was accepted, and the Empire waited. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing happened. Confused, the Empire reached out, but received no response. Finally, a sealed message arrived from the Shadow Talons leader, a name so feared it was never spoken aloud. The message contained only 3 words: "Do not proceed." The Empire's advisors were stunned. The Talons had never rejected a mission. They had never warned anyone. They simply vanished after the job was done. Why refuse now? What did they see in humans that scared even them? The Empire grew restless. Perhaps the assassins had gone rogue. Perhaps they feared the pay wasn't enough. So lower-tier bounty hunters were sent in secret. They vanished. Not a single one returned. Curious, the Empire sent a team of military scouts to investigate Earth. What they brought back made no sense. They described humans as unpredictable, illogical, and terrifying in ways that couldn't be measured. One scout spoke of a human soldier who dragged his injured body across a battlefield just to throw a smoke bomb and save a teammate. Another mentioned a human scientist who locked himself in a burning lab to upload data that could save others. They described humans laughing in pain, smiling in chaos, and turning every defeat into a lesson. The scouts didn't talk about weapons or technology. They talked about attitude, about how humans stared into danger as if it was just another challenge to beat. In desperation, the Empire tried artificial intelligence to simulate and predict human behavior, but the AI systems failed repeatedly. One even shut itself down, claiming the logic was incompatible. That had never happened before. One engineer joked that the humans were so illogical, they broke the machine trying to understand them. No one laughed. The Empire reached out again to the Shadow Talons, asking why they refused the contract. This time, the leader replied with a longer message. He described watching humans fight, not for power or survival, but for each other. He mentioned how their pain tolerance, their loyalty, and their ability to hope in impossible situations made them more dangerous than any army. He ended with a warning. They are not like the others. They do not fear death. They turn pain into strength. You do not understand what you are provoking. This sent shockwaves through the Empire's core. For the first time, fear took root among the elite. If even the Shadow Talons were afraid, what were they dealing with? Whispers began to spread. Traitors refused to fly near Earth. Mercenaries deleted missions involving humans. Even black market dealers stopped accepting anything marked human origin. The Empire tried to suppress the fear, but it was too late. The silence of the Talons spoke louder than any explosion. Species across the galaxy began to notice. If humans were so dangerous that the Empress called for a private meeting with her highest advisors. The reports were laid out. Every attempt to study, observe, or harm humans had ended in failure. Worse, every failure made the humans stronger. They didn't just survive. They learned. They adapted. And they grew more connected. The Empress asked one question. If they are so fearless now, what happens when they advance further? The room was silent. No one had an answer. So, the Empire paused. For the first time in its history, it didn't strike back. It waited. It listened. And far away, on that small blue planet, humans kept pushing forward, building, exploring, surviving. They didn't know the full story. They didn't know how close they had come to being erased. But maybe, just maybe, they would have smiled if they did. Because for them, fear was not the end. It was only the beginning. After the unexpected refusal of the Shadow Talons and the chilling warning from their leader, the Virelian Empire found itself in a rare state of hesitation. The silence of its deadliest weapon had shaken the High Command to its core, but they refused to show weakness. The Empress ordered new operations, this time using less infamous means. The plan was simple: avoid headlines, act quietly, and remove the problem before the galaxy learned the truth. The first wave was a mix of experienced bounty hunters and remote assassination drones, designed to move undetected and eliminate select human targets: scientists, military leaders, space engineers. The Empire believed that without central minds, human progress would stall. But one by one, the hunters vanished. Some of them never even made it to Earth. Others disappeared mid-mission. A few returned, but they were not the same. They spoke in half-formed sentences, eyes empty, hands shaking, muttering about humans being wrong in the mind. One hunter, who had never failed a mission before, locked himself inside a cryocamber and refused to come out. All he kept saying was, "They saw me, but they shouldn't have." His voice was full of fear, the kind that sinks into the bones. Still refusing to accept defeat, the Empire sent in scouting teams from its elite military. Their job was not to attack, only to gather information, observe behavior, and report back. But the reports they returned with were strange, confusing, and at times, terrifying. One scout described a human research camp that had lost all contact with orbit after a meteor storm destroyed their equipment. Instead of panicking, the humans began to repurpose broken parts from old satellites. With no backup, no connection to command, and little food, they survived for 3 weeks and even completed their research before walking out of the wasteland. Another team watched a group of human soldiers practice combat in freezing temperatures. One trainee collapsed from exhaustion, yet when given the chance to rest, he got up again and asked for more. When asked why, he replied, "If I don't suffer here, I'll fail out there." These reports made no sense to the analysts at the Empire's core. Why were humans smiling in pain? Why were they laughing in situations where most beings would scream? The deeper the Empire looked, the more disturbing the truth became. Human soldiers didn't retreat when outnumbered. In fact, sometimes they advanced. Their medics worked twice as fast in emergencies, driven by emotions that others considered weaknesses: fear, sadness, anger, even guilt. And somehow, all of these so-called weaknesses made them stronger. A scout team stationed near a human outpost reported that a young officer, who had just witnessed a fellow crewmate die, continued to lead his team through a dangerous terrain. guiding them to safety without losing anyone else. When asked how he managed it, he simply said, "I owed it to her." The Empire's commanders tried to use logic to explain it, but there was no logic in a species that treated suffering as training and sacrifice as fuel. The Empire then tried to predict their behavior using its most advanced artificial intelligence systems. Massive data was collected: battle footage, interviews, medical scans, psychological profiles. But every time the AI tried to simulate a human response, it crashed. Not once, not twice, but every single time. In one instance, the AI actually created a scenario where the humans were completely outgunned and cornered. The simulation predicted surrender in all known species, but the humans charged instead. The AI flagged it as an error. When programmers tried to override the result, the system shut itself down and displayed a single word: unsolvable. The programmers were shocked. Machines that had guided the Empire's military for centuries were now admitting that humans were impossible to calculate. What scared the Empire most was not that humans were strong, but that they were completely unpredictable. In one final attempt to understand the threat, the Empire kidnapped a small human crew during an Outer Rim exploration mission. They were taken to a classified facility, far from Earth, where they were separated, questioned, and studied. But within days, one guard quit, saying he couldn't look them in the eyes anymore. Another broke protocol and gave them information about the Empire's plans. Within a week, the entire station experienced multiple system failures, all traced back to subtle sabotage. The humans had done it, not with weapons, but with words. They had convinced their captors to help them. When the station was finally evacuated, the humans were gone. The security footage was erased. The Empire knew only one thing: they had escaped. No alarms were triggered. No trace left behind. They just vanished, leaving behind questions that haunted every officer involved. Word began to spread, no matter how tightly the Empire tried to control it. The underworld talked in whispers. The phrase, "don't touch humans," became common among bounty hunters. Mercenary guilds refused contracts involving Earth. Some of the strongest assassins left their guilds entirely, wanting nothing more to do with a galaxy where humans existed. Other species watched all of this carefully. For the first time, they saw the Empire afraid. If humans could cause this much damage just by being themselves, what would happen if they decided to fight back fully? What if Earth was only showing a small piece of what it could do? The Empress held a meeting with her most trusted war advisors. They sat around a massive table, faces pale, voices quiet. The numbers didn't lie. Every attempt to suppress humanity had failed. The Talons refused to act. The Hunters were broken. The simulations were useless. And now, the humans were starting to move through the galaxy on their own terms. One advisor suggested a full-scale invasion, but he was met with silence. Another suggested opening peace talks. That got a few nods. But one general stood and asked the question no one wanted to face. What if they don't want war, but are ready for it anyway? No one answered. No one could. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity continued its quiet march forward. They didn't know how afraid the Empire had become. They didn't know their actions had made elite killers step away in silence. They were too busy exploring, building, learning. But those who had survived encounters with the humans remembered every moment. And when they closed their eyes at night, they saw not armies or weapons, but the fire in human eyes that said, "We're not done yet." The galaxy was changing quietly, and at the center of that change was something no empire wanted to speak of: the rising fear of humans. The Virelian Empire, once proud and unbeatable, had begun to crack from within, not because of war, but because of something it could not understand. Behind closed doors and in hidden research chambers, top minds from different species worked endlessly to understand what made humans so different, so dangerous, and so untouchable. It wasn't their weapons or their numbers, and it wasn't even their technology, which was still primitive compared to the oldest star empires. The true fear lay somewhere deeper, something buried inside their minds and souls, something the galaxy had never encountered before. Whispers spread between scientists who had secretly studied human behavior. They spoke of emotions turned into weapons, of pain becoming strength, of laughter during suffering, and of bravery not for victory, but simply for the person standing next to them. One research team played footage from a failed assassination mission over and over again, showing a single human protecting their group during an alien ambush. Even with broken ribs and blood soaking their uniform, the humans stood and fought, not out of command, but from a strange, silent decision that made no sense to the analysts, except to the other humans watching, who all nodded like it was perfectly normal. A captured assassin, trembling in a medical bay, told his interrogators that humans don't break like others do. They bend, they twist, they scream, but they don't stop. One Virelian commander, once proud and cruel, suffered a complete breakdown after interrogating the human diplomat. The diplomat had remained calm, respectful, and even kind, despite knowing he would never be released. The commander could not understand how someone facing death could be so at peace. The moment he returned from that room, he resigned from his position and vanished. Quietly, a new department was created within the Empire's intelligence. Its only job was to monitor human behavior and collect every piece of data, even the ones that seemed useless. But no matter how much they studied, there was always something missing, something just out of reach. The Empire scientists finally admitted something terrifying. Humans didn't react like other species because their fear wasn't something they tried to avoid. It was something they walked into, eyes open. They learned from it, trained with it, and carried it like a torch through the darkest moments. One terrifying report even suggested that humans were not the strongest because of their bodies, but because of how they treated weakness, not as failure, but as fuel. And that was when the truth began to rise like smoke from a burning city. Humans were not feared because they destroyed everything. They were feared because they could survive everything. Other species gave up when hope was lost, but humans kept going even when they had nothing left, driven by memories, by promises, by love, anger, sorrow, things that empires considered distractions. That was the truth behind the fear. The Virelian Empire could not win against a species that refused to lose. Every failed mission, every broken assassin, every unreadable simulation pointed to the same answer. Humans did not play by the rules of survival written by the galaxy. They made their own. And while other empires counted strength in ships and soldiers, humans counted strength in heart and will. Somewhere deep inside the Empress's palace, the highest-ranking officers sat in silence, watching the latest reports, and none of them could deny it anymore. This was not a species they could conquer or control. It was a species that could reshape the galaxy without ever needing to fire the first shot. And for the first time, the Virelian Empire, the most feared name in space, was now the one looking over its shoulder, wondering what the humans would do next. It started not with a war, but with silence. The kind of silence that spreads like a shadow in the middle of a storm, and the Virelian Empire, once the greatest power in the galaxy, began to feel cracks forming beneath its golden surface. For centuries, the Empire ruled with strength, fear, and control, believing it was untouchable. But after failing to eliminate the humans, and watching every mission fail one by one, something had shifted, something the High Council had not prepared for: doubt. The whispers of human strength had grown louder, not just in enemy territories, but within the Empire itself. Elite soldiers began questioning orders, assassins refused missions, and spies stopped sending reports. Whole fleets pulled back without reason, and governors across the border systems suddenly stopped responding to the Empress's messages. It wasn't rebellion, not yet. It was fear, confusion, and something even more dangerous: respect for the enemy. Human influence had done something no enemy ever could. It had broken the unity of belief. And once belief breaks, empires don't fall, they crumble. One by one, border planets began to slip away. Some declared independence, while others formed silent alliances with nearby human colonies, hoping to avoid the same fate as those who had resisted. The Empress watched from her throne room as star charts filled with red alerts, each marking a lost planet, a missing ship, or a silent station. In desperation, the Empire ordered the creation of new weapons, but the engineers had already started fleeing with their families, quietly seeking shelter in neutral zones. The once loyal Science Council, which had studied human behavior, was now divided. Some called for peace, others vanished entirely, taking their knowledge with them. The military command grew unstable, with admirals blaming each other and soldiers deserting their posts. In a desperate move, the Empress ordered the return of an ancient strategy, total planetary control, but it was too late. The people no longer feared her voice. Entire cities refused to obey lockdown orders, and in some places, the Empire's own citizens rose up, waving stolen human banners in the streets, shouting not for war, but for freedom. Across the stars, rebels, pirates, and even former enemies saw the weakness spreading through the Empire and took their chance, striking at supply lines, intercepting communications, and claiming territory the Empire could no longer protect. The galaxy, once silenced by the power of the Varelians, now echoed with voices that had been waiting too long to be heard. Meanwhile, the humans never fired a single major shot. They didn't need to. Their quiet victories, their unbreakable spirit, their strange kindness mixed with unshakable strength, those had been the true weapons. Every failed assassination, every broken fleet, every act of mercy shown by a human had slowly chipped away at the heart of the Empire. The collapse had begun from within, fueled not by explosions, but by the realization that the humans were everything the Empire was not, loyal to each other, fearless in chaos, and impossible to predict. The Empress, once surrounded by power and certainty, now stood in a throne room half empty, her closest advisors gone, her loyal guards unsure whether to protect her or escape. Outside the palace, on 100 different planets, people who once bowed in fear now stood tall with hope in their hearts. And as the stars grew darker around the crumbling center of the Virelian rule, one message continued to spread in every direction, not by force, but by truth. The humans had changed the galaxy, not by war, but by proving that fear could be beaten. And that was the first true blow that brought the Empire to its knees. As the stars flickered above the broken Empire, the last chapter of the Virelian rule began not with fire, but with a message, a warning carried through the void by a simple human ship, unarmed and alone, yet more dangerous than any fleet. The galaxy had already seen the fall begin, watched as the mighty Virelian systems collapsed under their own fear and confusion. But what came next was not destruction. It was something colder, something final. The human vessel, shining under the dim light of a dying sun, entered the space above what remained of the Empire's capital world. No weapons locked on it, no shields rose to stop it. There was no one left to command. Inside the control center of the dying palace, the Empress sat alone, surrounded by silence, her once mighty empire reduced to flickering screens and failing systems. The message played on every channel, translated in every known tongue, and yet it carried no threats, no promises of war. It carried only truth. The voice, calm and steady, explained how the humans had not come to conquer, only to survive, and how every attempt to crush them had only shown their enemies what humanity was truly made of. The message spoke of strength found in weakness, of courage born in hopeless places, of unity that did not need control or fear to exist. It reminded every listener of what had happened, not just the assassins who failed, not just the missions that collapsed, but the reason why they failed. The voice told them about human hearts, how they burned quietly in the dark, how they never gave up even when no light was left. The Empress watched in silence, her hands shaking, as the final lines of the message echoed across the stars. We do not wish for war. We never did. But if you raise your hand against us again, let this be the last warning. We will not answer with anger. We will answer with everything we are. That was it. Simple words, no fire, no shouting, just a final line of defense that didn't need to fight to be feared. Across the galaxy, the message was heard by those who still carried ambition in their hearts, and many dropped their plans in silence, realizing what they were up against. Others, once enemies of the Empire, quietly offered peace to human colonies, afraid to test the strength that had already brought down the greatest force in the known universe. On a distant station, an old general who once led attacks against human borders removed his medals and stared into the void, finally understanding why his victories never lasted. The truth had come, and it had come without warships. The Empress, in her final moment of clarity, ordered the last of her ships to stand down and sent a message back to Earth, not as a threat, not even as a surrender, but as a request for understanding. She asked them how they had done it, how a race so young had broken something so ancient, and the reply was short. We never needed to destroy you. You did that yourself. We just didn't stop you. With that, the story of the Virelian Empire ended, not in fire, but in silence, and the humans, without claiming territory or demanding power, became the most respected and quietly feared force in the galaxy, not because of what they had, but because of who they were. And the final warning stayed written in every record, played in every academy, and remembered in every dark corner of space, not just as a message from humans, but as a line no one ever wanted to cross again.